showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome everybody out today to episode 217 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. I'm the host. My name's Chris Hollifield. Thank you so much for coming back week after week as I continue this journey here in Salt Lake City, sitting down with the locals, professionals, business owners, anybody who's making this city a better place to live, making it a place that I know that I could be proud to call home. Listen, today on the podcast, I sit down with Cate Allen. She's got a heck of a story. We're going to get into that, find out her story. We're going to talk about acting. We're going to talk about her radio show. We're going to talk about it all. Before I do get into that, though, I want to tell you about the show sponsor, Oleo Skin and Beard. Great local company right here in Salt Lake City. Oleoskin.com is their website. Head on over, check them out. They make all kinds of great products. Some of my favorites. Lately, I've been using their skin oil a lot. I get really, really dry skin, almost like an alligator, and I just rub this on, and it is better than any moisturizer that I've ever used. Not a typical fan of all the moisturizers out there. So when I started using their skin oil, blew me away, and I'm a big fan of that. As well as they got some great beard washes, beard balms, beard oils. Again, oleoskin.com is their website. Use the promo code IAMSaltLake. It's going to give you 25% off of your entire purchase that you make from their website. Again, oleoskin.com. Hey, listen up. This upcoming Saturday, April the 9th, is the next I Am Salt Lake Live. It's going to be a great night. Hopefully, you're all planning on coming out to it already. By now, you should have heard about it. I have a really great evening planned. It's going to be at Club 50 West Broadway, right in downtown Salt Lake City. Doors are at 8 o'clock. It's a free show, so make sure to bring your family, your friends, your loved ones. Bring a date. Bring 5 of your friends that you've never met before. But I got on the show that night, I got Jimmy Martin, Kat Martin, Lee George Cade, and Rachel Cade. They've all been on the podcast before, so it's going to be a fun night of catching up and just having some fun, having some drinks. And come on out. We're going to be recording it for a live podcast. So if you have any questions for myself or any of them, we're going to be opening it up at the end as well. Like I said, Cate Allen is on today's episode of the podcast. I had a great time chatting with her and finding out her story. And it was recorded at the Utah Musicians Radio Studio right here in Salt Lake. Many thanks to them. So why don't you join me as we sit down and chat and find out the story of Cate Allen. Let's start there. I mean, where did you grow up? Where do you call home?
I actually grew up in Southern California. So
where in Southern California?
Huntington Beach.
Okay. Have we connected that I'm from Ventura at all?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's where I call home. That's where
I love it up there.
Isn't it beautiful there?
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
I mean, my family, we moved 20 years ago to Utah. Yeah. I still have family there.
Yeah.
But that's home to me. That's so what brought you to Utah then?
College.
College.
Dirt cheap. Because, even if you went to a state school, it was $35,000.
Okay.
Here, a couple grand. So I could work full time or even work part time, pay for all my college tuition and get a degree, whereas in California I couldn't.
Where did you come to school? What, BYU?
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Yeah, dirt cheap.
Were you excited to go to BYU, though? Were you one of those people that were excited, or was it just more because of the price?
Actually, no. It was not my first choice. I actually got into quite a few schools back east in USC, UC Santa Barbara, other schools I really wanted to go to. It's just when you're 18, who has $35,000 in the bank,
sure,
or $70,000, or
sure.
A couple $100,000? I didn't.
And was that the first time you ever came to Utah, or were you visiting Utah prior to that?
That was it.
What was your from California? What was your initial thought process of Utah? I'm just always curious.
Okay,
of that.
So I had complete culture shock, to be perfectly frank.
Sure.
So I finished high school and then I went and lived and worked abroad in Belgium for a year. So I was working for FedEx over there. And so I was speaking French and Dutch. I was working, I was going to school, and then I came back and I went to college. And going from Europe to Utah.
Well, California, Europe, and then Utah.
It was a complete culture shock.
A while ago, too.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in. You know what I mean?
And that was a different Utah than what's even Utah today.
For sure.
I think we've progressed a lot as a state.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah.
But when you go from, California, pretty free, pretty open, then living in Europe, then to Utah, I had culture shock. And so it was really bad. I actually called my mother in October and I said, I'm done. Get me out of here. I can't do this. You need to call the Middlebury back east, call George Washington back east. I can't be here. I can't handle this. Because there was so much judgment and it was just so much that I was like, everyone judges you for everything. And it was too much for me. And so coming from,
well, and this was Provo too, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, different even than Salt Lake City. What did you go to school for? What was your
I wanted
plan?
to do, but I realized it wasn't possible to do without a PhD. I wanted to go into political science, but
oh wow,
I realized I don't have money for a PhD. I've got to come out with a degree where I can make money and then I can move forward.
Okay.
So actually, my undergrad is in marketing, business, and French.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, because currently, I mean, we might jump all over the place, but I mean, this is a podcast and we can do that. There's no rules, in my opinion, because you're an actress.
Yes.
And you do radio.
Yes.
Was that, I mean, did you go to school for acting then?
I didn't,
or
actually.
I mean, because that's what I was expecting you to be like,
No,
okay, I went to BYU for theater.
I would have loved to, but no, I did not do that.
When did that come into the picture then?
So actually, I had a completely different life and career. So my undergrad is in marketing, business, and French.
Okay.
My graduate degree is in French and global management. So I worked a lot internationally. And so
You traveled a lot?
I traveled a lot. I wanted to travel, but again, I wasn't made of millions and my family wasn't either. So I knew I had to get a job where they would kind of want me to travel. So that's what I did. So I've worked in Europe, South America, the Caribbean, Asia.
So what got you into acting then? I mean, let's start there even. I mean,
I've loved it ever since I was little. I wanted to do it, but the parents that I had were like, no, this is terrible. This is wrong. Don't do that. It's evil. Like all bad things happen. So actually one of my siblings went to USC. And so she said, you know what? You want to do this? Skip school. We'll go get you an agent. My buddy, he'll take your headshot. So he literally, I skipped school. She called in for me. Her buddy, James, took my headshot. And then we went and I got an agent the same day.
And to get into like commercials
Los Angeles,
and little films.
Yeah. So I was 17 at the time.
What was your first commercial or
So
movie?
It was 2 weeks later. The agent called and said, "Hi, you've been booked on a Nickelodeon pilot. This is your call time. This is everything." And that was it.
What was the Nickelodeon pilot?
In the Hidden World of Alex Mack.
Did that go anywhere?
Yeah.
Did the Nickelodeon show go anywhere?
Yeah, it picked up. It turned into In the Secret World of Alex Mack. And so...
See, and I'm not familiar.
Yeah, well...
I was a Nickelodeon junkie, though. I mean, I enjoyed...
Well, the thing is, if you didn't have cable, you didn't have Nickelodeon.
Okay.
So, I mean, we didn't have cable, so I couldn't even watch it myself. But yeah, that was the first show that I booked.
Was it a big role or
I was a hand double.
You were...
Yeah.
A hand. What is it? What is the job of a hand double?
So, for example, in that episode, so I have little hands. I'm a petite person.
Oh.
And so, door handling a fire extinguisher, putting out a fire. It was all hand double stuff.
So nobody ever saw your face then. No. They just saw your hands.
They saw my hands.
And so you're watching the show and you're like, those are my hands. Those are my hands.
So that was my first paid gig, yeah.
But it kind of got you a little bit of that addiction, that rush. You're like,
absolutely.
I want to do more. I want to keep doing this.
Absolutely. I loved it. But then at the same token, I didn't own the car. I was using the car from my parents and I was skipping school to go do this.
And did your parents know you were doing this then?
Not at the time.
Not at the time.
My sister was calling in for sick.
And what was their response when they found out you were doing it?
They did not like it.
But they supported you, or
no, not at all.
No, not at all. Do they support you now in what you're doing?
It's debatable.
Debatable.
So the thing is, I actually, I did that. I loved it, wanted to study it in school, and that just wasn't an opportunity if I was going to get assistance for tuition. So I didn't. And then went on and worked corporate for a long time.
And were you doing any films or any acting at this time?
Nope.
Local plays, anything?
I did a couple of things on the side. So for BYU television, like I've been in 6 episodes of Total Body Workout that's on BYU TV. I've been in a couple docs, some other things along those lines. Been a guest on different TV shows.
Well, yeah, because I was looking at your IMDb and you have quite a list of things that you've been in.
Yeah, so that's been the last 4 years. I've been busting my butt.
You've been staying busy. I mean, is there anything notable, for recording's sake, that you would feel like maybe should be mentioned that people might be familiar with?
Well, one thing that's really exciting is I actually had a supporting role in a feature film called Waffle Street, and it comes out tomorrow on iTunes, Amazon.com, Vudu. So I played a corporate woman.
Okay.
So it was very natural because that's what I did a lot.
And it's called Waffle Street?
Waffle Street. It was actually filmed here in Utah. So it's based upon a true story about a man who was in a hedge fund. He worked for a hedge fund and then changed and started working for Waffle House. And essentially he was trained by an ex-con and how it changed his whole life. So it's a family-friendly film, but that's probably the most recent that's coming out. But there's another film called Adopting Trouble. It's going to World Fest in April, and it's up for an award right now. And I had a supporting role in that. I played Christine, a disgruntled pregnant woman. There's a couple of others that are already out. One of them, I had a supporting role in with Luke Perry. I was really excited about that because
Luke Perry, wasn't he in Beverly Hills
90210?
So you got to hang out with him.
Yes, I met him, and it was...
Is he as cool as you would think he is?
He's so quiet.
Really?
Really quiet. So I played a cop in that, Officer Blaine, and that's in Scoot and Cassie's Christmas Adventure. And then I've been in a few features. Christmas Oranges, that's a Christmas film. I played Walter's mother. I adopted a little boy in that.
So you have like an agent out there finding you these roles in these films.
I've got a couple of agents. So I've got 2.
A couple of agents?
Yeah, I've got 2 here in Utah.
What is the benefit of having a couple of agents?
Well, getting work.
So one agent can't find you the work?
It depends regionally, and then also what they have capacity to do, because there's different types of agents for different types of things. So you have theatrical, which is film. You also have commercial. Then you have print. Then you have voiceover. So, if you look at SAG, I think there's a listing of 37 types of agencies that you can be a part of.
Okay, so kind of each one has their own little specialty and what they...
And there's some that are full service that they'll cover multiples, but they may have everyone within your category, and they may say, "Oh, we just want you for commercial." You know what I mean?
Where would you like to go with all this acting? Where would you like to see it take you?
What do I love doing?
Where would you like to see it take you? Do you have any end goals, or you just kind of want to see where it goes?
Absolutely. Series regular, a lead on a series, episodic. Love doing feature films, love doing commercials, love doing episodic as well.
Yeah.
It's just a blast. It's so much fun.
What's been like the most rewarding thing? Like what's been the most highlight of your acting career? Is there one thing or a couple things?
I don't know that there's
Meeting
one
Luke
thing.
Perry?
That was pretty cool because, when you had that, that crush on this person as a kid.
Were you watching Beverly Hills 90210
as a kid?
As a kid, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's Tiffany. We lived in, one of my good friends growing up, we lived in the same cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
And so we'd go over each other's houses and watch it.
Oh, see, and I wasn't allowed to watch it as a kid. For some reason, my mom didn't want me, so I would go watch it at friends' houses.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But that's what we did. Now I look back, I'm like, I watched that show like that,
Yeah, for
kind
sure.
Of embarrassing.
Yeah, it's funny how when it's at the time, but you think back to that. I'm sure it was the same for you. You were probably into skateboarding. You probably did some surfing.
I never got into surfing. I lived in California and never did the surfing thing.
But then also watched Beverly Hills 90210.
Yeah. Did you watch, what was that, Melrose Place that was on after 90210?
Totally.
That was like the show.
That was like the bomb, and that was scandalous for the time, you know?
Well, yeah, you didn't want your parents knowing you were watching that. Did you grow up, did you grow up Mormon?
Mm-hmm.
I know we didn't get there in that part of it. So, I mean, was it a pretty strict home that you grew up in then?
Yeah. So the thing is, there were not a lot of Mormons, to put it simply.
Well, in California, yeah.
Pretty much none.
Yeah.
So there's like 3 families. So that's the part that's really interesting / awkward for me. People ask you that here. You don't talk about that in California. You don't go up to someone and just meet them and say, oh, are you just don't talk about religion. It's something pretty private. And it's something that not until you're really good friends with someone do you start talking about that.
Well, sure. Yeah.
So here it's very interesting when, someone's like, hey, what's your name? Oh, by the way, I'm like, wait, this is personal. You know what I mean?
Do you find people ask that here? I mean, I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
It's just the circles I run in. I guess I don't get asked that. I ask it on the podcast more to just kind of get a correlation of the connection to Utah, since I guess it is such a Mormon dominated state. Did you grow up there? Did you, all that? But
yeah, so
now I feel kind of bad that I asked.
No, you're fine. You're fine. It's but the thing is, it's so interesting. This is a very different culture in Utah than it is in California, and so growing up when something is so private, like I knew all my best friends, I knew their religions, but a lot of times I went on their retreats, whether it was Episcopalian, Presbyterian, Catholic, and I mean, a lot of times they were really fun. Like I loved my friend's Presbyterian church because you know what happened on Sunday? They had a rock band every single Sunday. And then as soon as they were done after the hour, you had donuts. I was like, this is the funnest church ever.
Yeah. And you wonder, well, why aren't all churches like that?
Well, yeah. And so as a kid, as you're starting to learn and be exposed, because, growing up in a place where I had a lot of Jewish friends too, like I went to a lot of bar and bat mitzvahs. They're a blast. Love those, and quinceaneras and everything along those lines. So it's really interesting. I attribute a lot of my Judaism knowledge to my best friend growing up. And I knew all about Elijah at the age of 7. I knew Elijah came every Friday night. You had to leave the door open and a chair open, and you wore a napkin on your head, and you had to say a certain prayer, and then you were good to go. It's so interesting to me because as a kid, you're playing with your friends in the cul-de-sac, and you're just like, hey, this is just how it is. Okay, cool.
And I think it's good to be exposed to multiple religions like that. I mean,
for sure.
Was your family pretty okay with, you being exposed to?
Totally. And then it was like, oh, okay, this is what's going on. Let's go play Foursquare outside, Well,
because I've had people on this podcast that growing up in Utah that grew up Catholic or a religion like that, and they were saying it's tough. The neighbor kids, they weren't allowed to play with them.
Yeah,
they weren't allowed to associate with them.
That to me is so bizarre.
It's a very different type of lifestyle than I'm used to.
Yeah, I don't comprehend that at all because then, going to live abroad and living in Belgium, it's a heavily Catholic country, which is fine. So I went to Catholic school and I learned a lot as well. And I mean, it's one of those things of just showing respect, so every Friday I remember we had to go take communion and, I wanted to be as respectful as possible. So I just said, hey, what do I need to do? And how does this work?
Would you ever go back to Belgium and live?
Oh yeah. I've gone back. I've gone back to work.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like recently?
Not recently. The last time I was in France and Belgium, it was a couple of years ago.
Wow. What's like your favorite place? Do you have like an all-time favorite place that you've out of the country, out of the US?
Oh, that is such a tough question because there's certain things that I love for certain areas. Like if you go up, in French it's called Anvers, but in Dutch it's called Antwerpen.
Okay.
So it's just north of Brussels. There is this gorgeous cafe that they play live jazz music all the time. And it is just one of the best places to just go and chill and, bring your notebook, have some thoughts, but it's just so relaxing and it's so enjoyable.
Yeah.
That I love that place, but at the same time, I love a lot of places in Paris too, because the lifestyle is different. It's a lot more slow. There's a lot more appreciation, especially when it comes to art and other things. But then the south of France, have you ever been?
I no.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
I need to go.
Especially in the summertime when you have the sunflowers blooming and the lavender blooming. And if you're near the coast and then you smell the ocean, it's like, it is this concoction of just amazing smells.
Okay, so here, let me even rephrase that question then, since you found out that I've never been. If I was to say, book a trip tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Where would you say, Chris, you got to do this trip?
Okay, well, I already have an itinerary planned.
Well, what is it?
I've created itineraries for people because I have friends that know I've gone and lived over there a few times and gone back and forth, been in several weddings. And so there are certain things that I really love art. I enjoy certain periods more than other periods.
Okay.
And with my master's degree, I know more about French literature than the average person. I had to read 500 books.
Wow.
And then do an oral and written exam on those books. And then my master's thesis, it's on women troubadours in southern France and how they're revolting against the conventions of the day. So I analyzed women troubadours from 1100s to 1300s and saw how they were able to change the atmosphere. Like women in the 1100s in the south of France could own land.
Okay.
Did you realize that?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I mean, it was close to impossible, but what these women troubadours did, it was so phenomenal. So that's why I'm like, well, I would say, okay, do you want to go to Paris? Do you like Paris? What do you personally like?
I just want to travel.
Okay.
Where would you,
so if you would just want to travel.
Yeah, just get out of the US.
You want to travel, you want to check out some stuff, I would say definitely go to Brussels. You have to see Madakimpis and Junakipis. And so this is a little boy and a little girl peeing. And so they have a statue. It's a water fountain.
Hey, I'm down. That sounds great.
But then also in August, they have this carpet of flowers that's in the open square, and it is gorgeous. And then they have the best chocolates. And are you a beer drinker?
I can't anymore. I don't do gluten. So that's fine. I can't do beer. I loved beer. I used to be a big beer drinker.
Got it. Well, the thing is, Belgium is known for beer and chocolate.
Okay.
And so even back when I lived there, now people are getting more into fruity flavors. They had 200 plus flavors when I lived there. And so they're known for that. They're a very small country, but they like their flavors of, their things they like to indulge in. But then if you go up north to Bruges or Brugge, it's called Venice of the North. So especially in the fall when the colors are changing, they have all the canals that you can go through. It's just gorgeous. And so it's very picturesque. So I really love it up there. But then if you're in town for the Queen's birthday in Holland, Amsterdam is this wild and crazy parade and party, and everyone's wearing orange. And it's just this sheer happiness in the city.
See, and I've always wanted to go to Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. Just
and the museums. I mean, if you like art, Van Gogh is there, and then you have Anne Frank's museum. I mean, there's so many amazing works of art, but then you have amazing works of art in Paris too. So I'm a big fan of Musée d'Orsay. But then you have some amazing cathedrals like Chartres. But then that's why I'm like, well, what do you like?
Well, yeah,
if you
I just want to travel.
Like Mont Saint-Michel. Are you familiar with Mont Saint-Michel?
I'm not, no.
Okay,
no.
Mont Saint-Michel, it was an abbey that turned into a prison. So it's off the coast of Brittany, and based upon the rainy season and how the weather is, there's a bridge that sometimes there's ocean in between it and sometimes there's not. Sometimes you can just go straight to it. But it's a really fascinating, little island that's just off the coast. And I don't know.
Is it pretty cheap? Can you travel it pretty inexpensively? Can you do all of it pretty
I mean,
cheap?
if you're willing to do youth hostels and there's certain ways that you can do it. So for example, there's the red bus line if you're in Paris or if you're in Brussels, and you just sit on the bus, you get your 24-hour pass or 48-hour pass, and then it takes you around. It takes about 2.5 hours in Paris to go and see everything. Then you can hop off the bus at any time to go check out stuff. They have it in any major European city. I think they even have it in New York and Los Angeles too.
Yeah, no, I need to get out and travel. I've done like Tijuana.
Yeah,
I've done like over the border in Canada.
Yeah,
that's like my extent.
Well, the thing is, if you want to do that, but then if you want to go down to the south of France, Avignon. Avignon is a medieval city, and some of the coolest parts about it is one of the popes actually lived there. So there was a point in time in history where there was more than one pope based upon what was going on with the Catholic Church. And so especially in the summertime, they have Fête de la Musique, or music festival, and they have outdoor plays. They have, music. They have these festivals. It's just so alive, and it's so fun in the summer.
Well, you've definitely painted a picture in my head that I'm like, I got to go try this out.
I love it.
Got to go experience it. But back to the acting. back to the acting.
Sorry.
No, that's
totally
fine.
Got completely diverged on that.
That's what I love about podcasts. What advice would you give to somebody, say, that maybe wanted to get into a career of acting? I'm sure you have enough knowledge now, right? That you could give a little piece of advice to people listening.
So I would want to clarify and find out, well, what do they exactly want to do? Do they want to do theater? Do they want to do film? Do they want to do commercial? Do they want to do television? Or because once they can get those clarifying questions, then it helps. But if they just are like, hey, I just want to do it. Then
I want to become famous. I mean, do you hear that a lot, right?
I do.
I want to just become famous.
Then,
everybody to know me.
Yeah, then then don't go into acting.
You don't think so?
No.
Do you think that's kind of a bad way to get into something?
Absolutely.
Why is that? Why do you feel
Because
that?
the thing is, you can tell. You can tell if someone's passionate about it. Acting is, you're essentially pretending to be someone else and you want the audience to believe it. If someone's obsessed with becoming famous, how can they have that come across?
True, but don't you think, I don't know. I mean,
I hear it a lot. And so if someone wants to become famous, I'm like, that's fantastic. Go be on Survivor. Go be on some reality show of some kind. And you can get instant fame.
Would you ever do a reality show?
I don't know. That's a good question. I guess it depends on what it is. And if it's something that I think, oh yeah, this would be fun and I'd enjoy doing it.
I remember The Real World years ago.
Oh my goodness.
I had some friends be like, you should go try out to be on The Real World. And that'd be fun. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, would that bug you to have cameras following you all day like that?
I don't think it would bug me. I think it'd just be really different and you'd have to adjust to it.
Sure.
Because if you're like, oh, I'm used to cruising around in my underwear, you're probably not going to cruise around in your underwear, right?
Yeah. I mean, but there's so many reality shows now, and most of them are so scripted that they're not even really reality anymore. Though,
all reality shows are scripted.
Sure.
They're just
true.
Not paying the writer, but any basic reality show, you have to have drama and conflict, and then some form of a romance and laughter, and humor involved. That's your basic script.
Would you ever write them? Would you like to write at all for a movie or make
I actually have.
You have?
So I'm part of a writers group. And I've been doing that for a couple years. So, I've taken some screenwriting classes, and I directed a short film recently. I'm excited about that.
Which is what? I mean, do you want to?
It's called Tinder Date.
Okay. Well, let's get in Tinder Date.
Yes, it's actually based upon a true story that happened, and so that's one of the best parts about it.
A true story of yours?
No, not of mine.
No.
It's actually of a friend. And
of their Tinder date.
Yes.
Can you talk about it?
Absolutely. I mean, talk about awkward as I'll get out.
No, I find Tinder to be so fascinating because you get you get this whole group of people that hate it, and then you get this whole group of people that love it.
Well, you have that, and then other people who just call it sex swipe.
Yeah.
So I mean, it really just depends. But I went to 4 Tinder weddings a little over a year ago.
Okay.
So I've been to a fair amount. It seems to be working pretty well in the state of Utah, to have gone to that many Tinder weddings, and all of them are still married, and one of them even has a kid now.
See, well, I mean, honestly, I've used Tinder a lot in my dating life. And really, I mean, I find the most serious people on Tinder versus the other dating sites.
Oh, really?
But anyway, Tinder Date.
I'm looking to you as the expert because I don't do online dating, so I can't speak to it at all.
Have you ever done online dating?
No, sorry.
No, never. Would you do online dating or no?
I don't know if it's really for me. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. So Tinder Date, what is the story?
So it's about these 2 guys. They're supposed to meet this girl at her house, and it starts out that they're in the car. One's kind of a geeky, awkward guy, and the other one's kind of the cool guy. Doesn't matter what he wears, what he does. And he just ate a burrito, and he has burrito breath, and he's like, I'm going to use their toothbrush. I'm going to go to their bathroom, use their toothbrush. And the awkward guy's like, you can't do that. He's like, I can do whatever I want. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so the awkward guy's like, just don't embarrass me. Anyway, they show up like an hour late to the date. And there are these 3 girls waiting. And
so wait, 2 guys, 3 girls? Mm-hmm. How did they pull that off?
Well, it was just supposed to be 1 guy and 1 girl, but
I got you.
The awkward guy winds up being the chauffeur to drop off his buddy.
Sure.
So they go to the house, and because he has this bad breath, he doesn't even say hi. He just basically beelines it for the bathroom. Goes in there, does his business, but then the business causes some flooding with the toilet. And long story short, he comes running out of the bathroom with a completely flooded toilet. But in between that time, the awkward friend just basically is so awkward, continues to make fun of and put down and say these puns to the girl that his friend is supposed to go out with. So it's just like an all-around awkward situation. It's funny. I don't know if I described it very well.
No. It sounds really funny. Can you watch this? Is it up anywhere to watch?
We just finished filming it on Sunday.
You just finished it. Okay.
Yeah, so just finished filming it on Sunday. So it'll go to the editor. It should be done in about a month.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to keep an eye out for that.
Drew Danbury, he's the writer on it.
Oh, yeah, Drew, but the barber down in Provo.
Yeah, Drew's awesome.
I've always wanted to get my haircut done by him.
You should. Yeah. He's really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to get him.
He grew up in California too.
I'd love to get him on the podcast one day.
For sure.
It's not enough hours in the day, not enough episodes come out a week, and anyway, Drew Danbury, good guy though.
So he wrote it, and then he also was the director of photography too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's get into radio. Let's talk about your radio show that you do on K-Talk.
Okay.
Let's start. Where for people listening? What is it? Where 6:30 a.m. is the channel. What is the radio show?
The website is k-talk.com. It's on AM 630. I do a live show every Monday, 9 to 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And I cover a couple of different subjects. I cover entertainment. I also cover social issues, women, and then business. So with that, I've been with them for 4 years now, a little over 4 years. And I completely fell into it. It wasn't planned upon.
We'll share that story then.
So I started acting. I started just applying and auditioning for things. I booked a job as a host here locally on a local show. And after a month, they're like, hey, you're doing such a great job. Could you also do radio? And I said, sure. And so that's how I started radio. And I was a co-host for a political news talk radio show. So I did that for some time. And then...
What show was that you were doing?
That was called Buy Back America Youth. So that was a while ago. So my co-host at the time, Casey, he's now actually running for Utah County Commissioner.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of funny as we continue to grow and move on. But he was also Mia Love's campaign manager. So it's funny as you kind of keep moving on with life, how things happen. And then after that, then I did a business show. And then I did both of those shows. So it was 5 days a week. Then I asked to do something a little different and do it as opposed to being a co-host, just do a show on my own. And so that's what I have.
So
now.
You just do it by yourself. You don't have a co-host that you do it with. Well, my question was going to be, why did you choose live radio versus just like a podcast like this? But like you said, it kind of fell in your lap.
That's exactly what happened.
So, do you podcast it at all, or is it just strictly you can only listen live?
Oh, no, you can also, I save all the MP3s. There are times when I have to do pre-recorded shows. So, when I get booked on things, I'll do a pre-recorded show, especially if I have to be out of town. And, I feel very lucky and very fortunate that I've been able to book a fair amount of things in Los Angeles as well as other states. And so, it's been awesome.
Do you feel, have you done a podcast at all, or you've only done like live? Like you said, you do pre-record. Do you like doing it like a live format like that? Like to me, if we were doing this live, there would be that kind of even a little bit of stress, kind of like, oh shoot, people are listening live. We can't fix this or we can't edit this.
I guess for me, there is no stress about it. For me, it's fun. Yeah. I love it. I enjoy it. It's one of those things that brings happiness to me. And then especially if I'm able to do things that it can inform the listeners and inform the public and even problem solve, I love that.
And again, you said Mondays from 9 to 10 on 6:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'll put those links with this show so people, can check it out. Because
that'd be awesome.
I'd love to listen. But Mondays 9 to 10, I'm usually at work and I can't.
Yeah, a lot of people
get on the radio. But that's why I like Do you listen to podcasts at all?
I do listen to podcasts, and that's why I also save all the MP3s.
Sure.
So when people want to get to it. So for example, today it was kind of a women empowered day. So I brought on a writer director of Waffle Street. She's actually a mom of 4. And so when people are like, oh, I can't do this, she makes it work. You can make it work. If you are passionate about something and you love something, you make it work. And then also, Real Women Run, so about politics and women in politics. And then Suzanne Wagner with Wild Women Symposium, which is about healing. And so the thing is, there are people here in the city doing amazing things. So I'm like, hey, let's talk about it and see, as opposed to, because after the legislative session ended, a lot of people are like, I can't believe all this crap going on. Rah, 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 rah. I'm like, hey, you know what? You could either get down on that, get really frustrated, or let's look and see what we can do and what are some of the solutions. And, maybe this comes from working in business for so long. When you're presented with problems, you have to become a problem solver.
Absolutely.
And that's just part of how it is. And, having a strong background in project management. I don't know if you know what a Scrum Master is.
I don't know.
Anyway, I'm a certified Scrum Master. It means essentially that I am certified in Agile methodology. So I am able to get things done on time and on budget, or either under budget and delivered early.
Well, there you go. You're hired.
So the thing is, when I have people come to me and they, are disclosing or giving problems, and I'm like, okay, well, do you want to just dwell in the problem, or do you want a solution? And because if so, hey, let's find some, because I think that there's plenty of solutions. It's just a matter of what are you willing to do?
Absolutely.
And
that's in everything in life, really.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a solution for everything. So quickly I know I can even be hard on myself. This isn't possible. I'm not going to get this to work, or I'm not going to get here where I want to go in life. But there's a solution.
Well, and I think sometimes too, it's stepping back and maybe even having that conversation with someone where you're like, I'm a little frustrated, but then once you get it out, then you can step back and look at the vision and say, oh, okay, I think I'm seeing some possible answers.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, last year I covered the legislative session, and I didn't know Utah had such a big problem in child sex abuse. I was like, what the heck? What is going on here? And that's when I found out that we are number 1 in the nation for reported cases. Wow. So it's 1 out of 4 girls, 1 out of 6 boys, 1 out of 3 women, and 1 out of 10 men will be sexually assaulted or abused in their lifetime in Utah. And that's higher than national average.
Why do you think that is that way?
There's a lot of contributors. I think with a culture of silence, with this unique culture of like, oh, well, it's not really my problem. I don't need to do anything. No, actually, this is your problem, because there are a lot of links to this, because when we have a trauma-laden population, people want to ease their pain. If they want to ease their pain, how are they doing it? It's usually through forms of abuse, whether it's drug abuse, alcoholism. We're number 1 in the nation for prescription addiction, as well.
Sure.
We're number 1 in a lot of things.
Number 1, even number 1, like in porn use.
Yeah.
And
so we're number
all this
1
crazy
in a lot
stuff.
of things that aren't good, but it's really what, as a radio show host, I started looking at this and I'm like, people are trying to numb the pain. They're in pain. Well, what if it wasn't just, hey, let's numb our pain? What if we actually tried to heal our population? What if we actually said, hey, here are some resources. Let's help you heal. And for each person, it may be a different healing modality, but let's get you access to this, because you know what? I don't want you to be in pain. I want you to be living a happy life. I want you to be enjoying it. I don't want you to be hurting so that you have this internal struggle all the time, but then putting on a perfect face. I'm like, that's not living a good life.
So what are some good things that we can do, or a listener can do, is to heal?
So I think that there's a bunch of things. I've actually sought out different things for healing, so I could say, hey, here is this, here is this, here is this. So one of the things that I found out with veterans that they use quite a bit is something called EMDR, so eye movement desensitization. And so that's a healing modality where you get into the memory and you kind of go back through all of it and then you release it. There's another healing modality called rapid eye movement therapy, or rapid eye technology. And that's where the tech basically helps you to release the neural pathways in your brain. It releases the neural pathways in your brain so that you can release multiple memories and then let it go. and release that trauma, release that stress. There's several other things. There's, your traditional talk therapy, there's foot zoning, there's Reiki, there's all these different types of things. And I'm like, I don't really care what people use, but let's get you access to this because, we've got a lot of our population, we've got a lot of suicide, we've got a lot of anxiety and depression. I'm like, let's get you access to things so you can heal. You don't just need to say, hey, this is my label and that's just who I am. That's fine if you want to claim it. But if you also want to claim access to healing, let's give you access, Do
you think, kind of back to the people not talking about it, though, do you think that kind of causes a lot more internal pain by not talking about it?
Absolutely. So, there's a couple of things. Recently, I also found out about another training that I haven't taken yet, but I'm looking forward to taking. It's called Darkness to Light training. And so with this, it is actually evidence-based, and it is proven that if 5% of your population is trained in this, it's adults being trained in this, if 5%, so you look at our state, we've got about 3 million people. Mm-hmm. So 5%, 150,000 people, if they're trained in this training, that starts to change the social norms of what is acceptable and not acceptable. And so with child sex abuse, if that's all it takes is 5%, 150,000 people, that they start to see those low-level boundaries crossings to say, hey, you know what? It looks like Susie's done being tickled now. How about we do something else? Yeah. And an adult actually speaking and saying that as opposed to that awkward silence, that changes part of our society, part of our culture, part of our community. And that to me matters. I'm not married. I don't have children, but I don't want anyone to be abused.
Yeah. Well, who does? I mean, I don't think a normal person wants anybody to experience
absolutely
pain.
Not. And so it's like, hey, let's do what we can to help everyone out.
No, and that's awesome.
So, I mean, I haven't taken the training yet. I've heard great things about it. There are other states where they have done this and they literally are changing their society. And so I'm like, well, let's do the same thing here.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, you definitely keep yourself pretty busy. It sounds like. What motivates you to do all this? I mean, you got the show, you're acting. I mean, there's got to be something what motivates you? I mean, what keeps you going?
With acting, I am passionate about it. I love it. Like, it's one of those things that brings me sheer happiness and joy. Yeah. So, and to find out that I get booked on something, that is just like, I am so happy. I'm probably beaming right now because I found out I got booked on something for tomorrow.
Nice.
And I'm really excited about that. But then, with specifically in covering the legislature, finding out what was going on in our state, after that happened, I got about 300 disclosures from different listeners about how they were abused as children. And I just thought, my goodness, this is not good.
Yeah.
What can I do to change this? And I realized I could have just sat back and been like, not my problem. This didn't happen to me. But I realized, no, I need some of these people, they're still so fearful of their perpetrators. And this could be 30 years later that it's like, they can't speak up, but I can. And so what I did this last session, there's a bill, it was called House Bill 279. And the way it works in our state right now is if someone was abused prior to 1991, they cannot report to the police. A typical sex predator, they don't have one victim. They sometimes have upwards of 100 victims. But the typical child sex abuse victim, if they're abused as a child, they don't come forward and seek healing till the average age of 42. That means that perpetrator has gone on for 3+ decades and has abused many more children. And so in learning and understanding these stats, because I was invited to go to the Attorney General's Conference on Sexual Violence, I started realizing who's going to speak up for these people if they can't even speak up for themselves because they haven't gotten healing yet. Mm-hmm. And so when I heard about House Bill 279, I just made time in my schedule and I went up on the Hill. And so the first time I just sat there for the Judiciary Committee meeting. And then the second time for the Senate Committee meeting, I spoke up and there was one person who testified and then I went up and testified and I said, this didn't happen to me, but I have had a lot of disclosures and this needs to change. And for a lot of these people, it would help with their healing if they could go and report to the police. And they may not have any evidence, but if there's corroborating evidence with other victims, it can help. So in the case of what happened with Spotlight in the Boston Globe back east, that's exactly what's happened. I mean, they had over 90 priests that were abusing children. And we're talking hundreds and hundreds of children.
Yeah.
But it was that corroborating evidence that helped to convict. And so, the second time when I went to the Senate committee meeting, I spoke up and I said, I am saying this because this is important. And in my little community, I visit a couple of older women every month, and I was invited to Thanksgiving by one of them, and she is sweet, and she is older, and she is 79. And I didn't know that. She didn't tell me she was going to do this, but I was there for Thanksgiving dinner, and she reached over, she held my hand, and there was a pause right before they decided to have a prayer before Thanksgiving. And she said, I want all of you to know that I was abused as a child, and your father was abused as a child. And I'm not okay with this. And that's why I brought Cate, because she's against these things. And I thought, you could have given me the heads up beforehand. But I realized she had never told her children or her grandchildren. And I realized she invited me there because she knew I would support her, even though I didn't know what she was doing. But she knew that I'm not okay with those things, and that I will physically be there, which I was. I just physically sat there next to her. And I just thought, my goodness. This woman, her life she's lived most of her life.
Sure.
Wow.
And that she felt comfortable and she felt safe.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, well, I guess this is where I had the opportunity to speak up. It was never something that I was like, hey, I'm going to go do this and sign up. It was just like when everything kind of combines and conspires that I was like, well, this is in my face. It's in my lap. I can either ignore it or I can do something to help another person.
What can the listener do? What can somebody who's listening right now do to I mean, what can they do to help? I mean,
well, absolutely.
What can I do to help?
I think a couple of things, because it's passed our legislation, but it still hasn't passed through Governor Herbert.
Sure.
So I know I've got to write an email. I've got to contact him to say, please pass this legislation, because I want our population to heal.
Yeah.
And not everyone will come forward and name their perpetrator. But for some who want to, if they have that possibility, whereas there's some right now, they can't even do that because they're time barred. There's a woman, her name is Deanne Tilton. She is the founder of an association called Talk to a Survivor. She was abused at the hands of her father. And she was from the ages, I want to say 6 to 9. Well, she is now in her late 40s. Her father has gone on to abuse several other children that she knows about in her extended family. And she's like, I would like to report it, because if right now she's time barred, she can't. But if this bill passes into law, then she can report it. And so maybe it could stop this man from continuing to abuse little girls.
Yeah. So I mean, as a personal listener, we can email.
We can email Governor Herbert. We can also email our legislators to say thank you, because it passed unanimously in the Senate. Unanimously. And all of them said, yes, we will go ahead and do it. And so, I mean, there's provisions in the law. So essentially, if you're 53 or under, you can go ahead and do it. If you're 53 right now, you have 3 years to go ahead and report. And so it's where we can contact our legislators and say, please, this really matters. There's also contact our governor, but get darkness to light training. Talk to a Survivor. They are providing the training. She's certified to do it. Get trained in this. Let's stop this from happening. I mean, I don't want it to happen to anyone. I don't want it to happen to anyone's children. This is wrong. And this is where we need to start speaking up to be like, you know what? This isn't okay anymore. It may have been okay in the past.
Well, I don't think it was ever okay.
Well, people would hide it.
Sure.
And they cover it up and keep it silent.
You get fearful, though. I mean, I'm sure there's a bit of, hey, I don't want to report my dad, or I don't want to report my mom.
That's exactly the problem.
I mean, there's that
And if you're having Sunday dinner with them, how are you going to do that? But the thing is, and this is the part, because a lot of people are like, well, kids lie. No, they don't. Look at the stats.
Well, especially about that stuff. I mean, they're not going to make that up.
No one wants to be identified as that. It's not seen as a good thing. Less than 1% of people lie about it. And the only time it goes up to the average crime rate of 3 to 6% is when a child is coached by a parent to lie about it and they're in a custody battle. That is the only time. So, I mean, right now in the state, we passed last year some legislation called Start by Believing. Have you heard of it?
I haven't, no.
Okay, it's the coolest thing. So we are second in the nation to do it. It basically means if someone discloses to you, you start by believing. You don't say, well, what were you wearing? Where were you dressed? Where did you go? That's none of our business. No one wants to talk about consensual sex. Why would we want to talk about non-consensual sex? And so that's not our job to judge the person. Our job is only to do one thing. If someone discloses to you, say, I am so sorry that this happened to you. Yeah. And you start by believing them and then ask them if they have the resources that they need so they can heal. That's it. That's our only job. And that's very different than what has happened a lot, I think, in the past, is that if someone discloses, they're told, oh, well, you're a liar. That's a really good person. This person would never do that. That's not the truth.
Do you hear that a lot, though? People saying that?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, so quick to defend.
Exactly. But the thing is, like, I know if someone's going to seek me out and they're going to disclose to me, they know that I'm a safe enough person that I'm going to believe them and I'm going to want to get them access to resources and foundations for healing. Yeah. So that's where I've been able to find out of different ones. And I'm like, okay, these are these resources down in Utah County. Here are some up in Salt Lake. Here's some up in Davis County. Let's get you healed. Let's take care of you.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And I'll, any website links I can link,
oh, for sure.
on this episode, what would you put on there?
Well, there's Start by Believing Utah. So there's a Facebook page. There's also an Instagram. There's a Twitter. There's a Snapchat. There's also a YouTube page. But the part that's cool about it is the first Wednesday of April is the Start by Believing Day.
Okay.
So what the state is doing, this is really cool. So have you seen the film Spotlight?
I haven't, no.
Okay. I think it's still playing at the Broadway. Anyway, it's about, it's an Academy Award winner for Best Screenplay and Best Picture with Rachel McAdams, Michael Keaton, Mark Ruffalo. And it's about how this team called Spotlight uncovers what happened within the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And how it wasn't just one priest or two priests, but they exposed the systemic problem. Well, they're going to be showing it that day. So it's going to start, the event starts at the downtown Salt Lake City Library. It's at 5:45. They're going to have a tabling event. So about 20 different organizations are going to come and give resources of information. And then at 7 p.m., the film Spotlight is going to be shown for free at the library. And then afterwards, the man who actually started this and what the film is based upon is Phil Saviano. He's actually going to fly in town as well as with Barb, and they're going to do a panel. And that's the part that's the coolest thing to me, because this one man has changed the lives literally of thousands of people. Unfortunately, it's a tragedy what happened to him, but he kept going to the Boston Globe saying, you need to cover this. You need to cover this. And by virtue of him going continually back to the Boston Globe did, and they did this investigative reporting, and that has ultimately changed the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
It's this one man. I mean, and I just think, wow, for you to go through so much terrible things and then speak up to help all of these others, I'm just like, you're a hero. You know what I mean?
Well, it goes to show one person can make a difference.
Absolutely.
One person's voice can change a lot.
So it kind of gives me chills, and I'm getting kind of choked up because I just think, I don't understand or know what he went through. I just know he was abused as a child by a priest, and that is horrific, and it should happen to no one. But he got himself to a place where he was healed enough to say, I'm going to speak up and I'm going to keep going until they tell me to stop. But he just kept going back to the Boston Globe, and then they eventually started doing it. And that's where the screenplay came from.
Yeah. Well, cool. I'll get all those links at iamsaltlake.com with this episode. Wow, you've definitely opened up my eyes there. I'm just trying to refocus my brain here a little bit.
No, you're fine. And see, that's the thing, because I was oblivious. If you would have asked me a year ago, January, I had no idea. Yeah. No idea about any of this. And then I was like, wait a second. I mean, I can do something. And that's why I'm like, it may not have been huge, but I'm like, I can speak up in behalf of others.
Sure.
That maybe they're not at that point where they can.
Yeah. Let's as we kind of wind this podcast down, let's talk Salt Lake City for a minute.
Yeah.
I love to talk about it with the people I bring on. this is a pretty standard question I ask is if somebody was visiting Salt Lake for a day.
Oh my goodness.
for a day and you said, go check this out, a couple things that Cate would say, gotta go check that out.
What time of the year are they here?
Right now, this time of the year.
Okay, if they're here right now, I would it's actually funny because I have a lot of friends from out of town come into town.
Well, yeah. So what would you say? Like they're just here for a day.
They're just here for a day?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I would take them on a tour of downtown, but then I would also take them on a hike. If we had enough time, I would take them up to Neff's Canyon. Have you been up Neff's?
I have, yeah. Beautiful.
Love it.
Beautiful.
Love it, especially when there's snow. But if there's not, I mean, because there's spring water right there too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gorgeous.
So you're a pretty outdoorsy person.
Yeah.
So you just probably eat up all the mountains here and all that.
I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Anything else in the city besides or just downtown? I mean, you just give them the whole tour.
Well, I kind of give them the tour and then I tell them like where certain things took place.
Sure.
And then I had a friend in town from Scotland and I took him downtown and showed him where all these films were filmed. And he was like, Cate, I had no idea. You knew so much about downtown and what was filmed where. I'm like, yeah, I guess it's because I work in that industry. I'm like, do you want to know anything else?
This is where Ruben and Ed was filmed, right?
Exactly.
That's about all I know is Ruben and Ed.
Well, we've had a lot of stuff. And then in the summertime, that's the best because we have so many festivals.
Oh, good.
And I love taking people to that. Or like RSL. I mean, taking them to a good soccer game.
Are you a pretty big soccer fan?
Oh my gosh. I lived in Europe.
Really?
I mean, that's what you do. I lived with a staunch Catholic family, and every Sunday it was soccer. That was the religion.
So do you go to a lot of, I mean, do you go to like every game? Every
I don't go to every game, but I do go to some.
I didn't know if you had like season pass or,
no, I
season
don't, but
tickets.
I do enjoy soccer.
Really?
Very much so. Or football, as everyone calls it.
Well, yeah, that's the proper terminal. Okay, favorite local eating spots. I asked this one too to everybody on. Any recommendations of places in Salt Lake that you would say?
It kind of depends. Like if I'm kind of in do I want the French bistro or do I want more like, hey, I feel like I want to help out more, so I'm going to go to Even Stevens. Like, what are we talking here?
Such good sandwiches.
I know. That's why I'm like,
Stevens.
What are we talking? Are we talking like sit down? Like,
just a few records.
Because even if you go to like Ruth's Chris, I mean, that's like if you're like, I am celebrating. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah, but then you have other great places too, like Settebello. I mean, and then I love gelato too. Man, it's good stuff over there.
That's right over what 2nd East and Third South, right there by Zest and
yeah. If you want a really good like French onion soup, you can go to Gourmandise. I mean, there's a lot of really good places downtown. Oh my gosh, have you been to Eva's Bakery?
I have, yeah.
Okay, have you had the lemon cream cheese stuffed French toast with blueberry compote?
I haven't, and unfortunately I can't anymore since I don't do the gluten.
Yeah.
thing.
Okay, Prior.
Yeah,
amazing.
Prior, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, there's just so much fantastic food in this town, in this city, in this valley. And it was kind of just a fun question I decided to throw in there because so quickly, I mean, how often are you with people? Believe it or not, more than I would like to admit, I'm with people and they're like, let's go to Applebee's. And you're like, are you serious? There is so much good food in this area. Why are we going to go to Applebee's or Chili's or something like that? Like, let's go somewhere good.
You go to D's when it's like, oh, it's 11 p.m. Or Village Inn when you're like,
yeah, exactly.
It's 11 p.m. and there's nothing else open.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's so much great food here. And again, like you said, it depends what you're celebrating. It depends your mood.
Exactly.
You gave some great recommendations.
I had a friend in town, and the thing is, I just didn't realize we tried to go to Frisch and or Zest rather.
Yeah.
Frisch is also good too.
Yeah, Frisch is great.
Tried to go to Zest, and then I was like, oh, we can't because of her kid. And so
that happened to my sister. I wanted my sister to come and she brought her baby, and I guess they can't because of their whole 21 and.
Well, yeah. And the thing is, it's funny because with them being European, she's like, she's already had wine and beer. It's no big deal. You know what I mean? Because in France, it's totally different because they have watered down. That's what they give their kids.
Just in a bottle.
Well, it's like they put it in a little glass, like a little tumbler, and it's just normal,
Yeah. Let's. How can people connect with you?
Okay.
Do you have like a website or Facebook or any,
I do. So I have a couple of different things how they can connect with me. So I have a Facebook fan page. So you can go to facebook.com/Cate Allen Official. That's Kate with a C. I also have an Instagram at Cate Actress. I have YouTube at Cate Actress. I also have a website. So cateallen.wordpress.com. So just a blog of some different projects I've done. It's a lot of fun.
Well, I just like, again, I mean, people that are listening to, what I'm hoping with this podcast happens is just kind of one big giant networking of Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
Just all the awesome people that are doing cool things. And I mean, you're involved with a lot here in Salt Lake City.
I think it's important. I mean, I live here. This is part of my society. It's my community. And I realize you get what you put into it. And there's a lot of people in the city that I really care about. And I want to make it the best place ever. So, I do my best to do that. And, we have a really great film incentive. I'm grateful the state has that. I'd love to see a television incentive come here because it's another stream of income for our state. Yeah. I mean, we've got a great IT sector. We've got great agricultural. But hey, let's make it even more so.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Anything else you want to talk about before we wrap this up here completely, before I hit the record button off? Or
I don't know. Is there anything else?
No,
I feel like I've been all over the map.
Well, no, I mean, I've learned a lot about you. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot we didn't cover.
Yeah.
But, to kind of get it into that hour of getting
for sure,
getting to know Cate Allen.
Well, I thank you so much for having me on here. This is a huge pleasure.
Absolutely.
And I love that you're highlighting Salt Lake specifically because, especially when I have a lot of out of town friends come in town, it has a very fun, different vibe. I realize there's a couple of situations that are a little challenging in downtown, and I'm really excited that Jackie's our mayor. I know that she's working on a lot of those things, and so I'm like, yeah, right on. Let's do this. Yeah. Let's make some changes. Let's make it even better for everyone living here.
Well, yeah, I mean, just in the last 5 years, 10 years, I mean, so much change, and there's still so much change ahead of us. But Salt Lake City is a pretty badass city, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. We even hit Huffington Post for like one of the best cities for artists. I'm like, yeah.
All right. Many thanks goes out to Cate Allen. What a great story. Really had a great time chatting with her. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I'm going to put all the links to get in touch with her at iamsaltlake.com/217 for episode 217. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode or any other episode of I Am Salt Lake. My email address is chris@iamsaltlake.com. Feel free. I'd love to hear from my listeners. Love to hear your thoughts on the podcast. Hey, listen up. I got a great deal for the podcast listeners. By now, you probably have heard of Lyft. It's a great way to get around Salt Lake City. It's a great way to go out bar hopping with your friends on a Friday, Saturday night. It's a great way to get to the airport. If you use the promo code IAMSaltLake, it's going to give you $50 and free ride credits. You just got to enter the promo code in there before you request your first ride. It's going to give you $50 off of Lyft rides. Again, the promo code is IAMSaltLake. Hey, I'm really excited. I got an iTunes review. It's about time. I haven't gotten an iTunes review since last summer. Pretty pathetic. You guys need to step up your game and leave some iTunes reviews for the podcast. But let me read this to you. I'm really excited to share this one. It's from Courtney P116. She writes, "My favorite Monday podcast. As a fellow Southern California transplant, Chris's views are refreshing. Most people born in Utah or Salt Lake are jaded and want to escape. They don't know how good they have it. It's great to learn even more about this great city. It reinvigorates my love for Salt Lake and keeps me wanting more. I've never written a review on a podcast, but this one deserves a generous 5 stars. Thanks for a great podcast, Chris." Courtney. Hey, that is an awesome review. That almost brought a tear to my eye. Doing this podcast is a lot of work. I put a lot of hours into it. And so, leaving a review is a great way to support the podcast. And many thanks to Courtney for doing that. There are some other ways you can support the podcast. You can, give it a one-time donation. $1 or $2 goes a long ways, helps with the web hosting, helps with the podcast audio fees. I'm in need of some new equipment. And so $1 or $2 donation can help keep I Am Salt Lake moving forward. Many thanks to those of you that have donated in the past. You can also become a monthly donor. That helps the podcast out. I got some really great different tiers for that. You know, you can become a $5 monthly donor, $10, $20. And all of those people out there that have been keeping I Am Salt Lake alive, really, really thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means a lot to me. Doing this podcast, I enjoy it. I really thoroughly enjoy sitting down and chatting and these conversations. But I can't do it alone. I need your guys' help with that. So head on over to iamsaltlake.com, hit the support button. Many different ways you can help keep I Am Salt Lake moving forward. I'm on all the different social medias. I'd love to connect with you. If you haven't said hello, please do it. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Drop me an email. I don't care. Just make sure that you say hello. I love to connect with the listeners and love to hear your thoughts on Salt Lake City or the podcast. Doesn't really matter. Hey, I know I've talked to you. I know I've shared with you. I got a brand new podcast that I'm doing with my girlfriend, Chrissy Shelley, Dating Baggage Podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, head on over to iTunes, search for Dating Baggage Podcast. It's been a lot of fun, you know, giving my thoughts and ideas in a different medium, sharing my thoughts of dating in my 30s, sharing my thoughts on what that's all about. It's been really fun, and all of the listeners of I Am Salt Lake that have checked that out, and your support means the world to me. And it's a lot of fun doing that show as well. So Dating Baggage Podcast, go check it out. Even if you're not dating, even if you're happily married, it's a fun show to listen to. Fun show to hear some different thoughts and ideas on the wonderful world of dating in your 30s. That's going to do it. The podcast is always free, folks. So subscribe. I got a new show of I Am Salt Lake each and every week. Remember the live show on Saturday, April 9th at Club 50 West. You guys have a great week. Get out. Enjoy the city. It's going to be a great week. So we'll see you again next week. Bye now.